Welcome to the School Owner Talk podcast, the longest-running martial arts school owner podcast in our industry. Join Dwayne Brummett and Allie Alberigo as they share expert insights, proven strategies, and the keys to growing your martial arts business. Let's take your school to the next level. And now here's our hosts, Dwayne and Allie.
Hey, welcome back to School Owner Talk. Today we're going to talk about the quiet parts of class, the ones that aren't loud, but actually teach the kids the most.
Yeah. And, your families walk in thinking that they're buying martial art classes, right? That's why they're there, but what they really want is all the things they always tell us: confidence, focus, discipline, emotional control, all this stuff. But this is hard to measure and also hard to teach.
Yeah, and if we don't teach that stuff on purpose, and that's the key, on purpose, and we missed that, meaning we don't point it out to the parents, well, the parents are going to miss it, the kids are going to miss it, and really then the progress just feels like it's about belts.
Yeah, and, it also is hard because you're trying to teach the student, and if you're a kid's school, it's the kids or your teens or your adults. But if they're not looking for the lesson, sometimes that lesson is evasive. So today we're going to give a simple framework, maybe kind of like, if you can, systemize or break down these type of teaching methods so that, there'll be instructors that are doing this naturally, maybe even they'll be able to do it. And we call this the invisible curriculum. The physical, the mentally, emotionally, and socially, and physically, mentally, emotionally, and socially, and how to make it obvious so that a parent sees or a student actually sees what we're trying to get them to learn.
Yes. Yeah. And let me ask this question first before we go in. If a parent were to watch your classes with the sound off, would they know what your school really teaches? Think about that question for a second. If they were to watch your class with the sound off, would they really know what your school teaches? So you brought up the invisible curriculum. Okay. So we need to kind of define what that is and why it matters. And so the inverse is the visible curriculum. So the techniques, the forms, the sparring, the fitness, all of those things are the visible part. Right. Your self-defense, all of that is the visible part of the curriculum. But the invisible part of the curriculum, that invisible part, is actually who the student becomes. And here's why this matters, because when we emphasize and allow the parents and the students to see the invisible, retention becomes better, because parents stay for the results that they now can see.
Right.
Referrals happen because parents are going to talk about the character qualities that you are creating in these little human beings.
Right.
There's a confidence in your price because you're not a commodity. And in fact, you probably, if you've done right, you're separating yourself from all of the other quote unquote competitions that are inside of your area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no doubt at all. I mean, that's definitely, and you, like you said though too, is what would they see if they just saw and didn't hear? And in my school, we only have monitors in the lobby. They can go on Zoom and listen on Zoom if they want to. So sometimes they sit in the lobby and they go on Zoom and listen and watch on the cameras and their phone. But you're right, though, like I always tell my instructors, like I'm a very organized, systematic, OCD type person. I want my students in one line. I want people to see the class. Like I always say to the instructors, I don't want them to see chaos. Like I want them to see this as an organized methodology, right? Like so. But when people see things all over and it's spread all over, it's like if you walk into your office to do a meeting and on your desk there's coffee cups and a half-eaten sandwich and papers thrown everywhere, it doesn't look like you're very organized, and neither does the class look organized when that's happening as well. So
Right.
I get mad at my instructors where they just say, go anywhere and spread out, and they're all over, and they're just like, it just looks terrible. So anyway, I think that, we have to do that and look. And, I like also that you talked about the quick gut check too. Before we got on, we talked about, if belts disappeared tomorrow, could you prove the value in your system? It's not just some people call it a belt factory. Every few months you get a belt, right? How many people I know that say I was a black belt and they literally don't even remember their instructor's name or the name of the style. Right. So I think that that's important for us to really understand. So if the belts disappeared, what would be the value in your program? How could you show it?
Yeah. And think about that question, like what you just said. If the belts are gone, how do you prove that value? Right. And that is really what parents are paying for. So let's give you a 4-pillar framework, if you will. So these are the pillars that you teach, whether you are meaning to teach them or not, because we're teaching the physical, the mental, the emotional, and social parts here. And here's the cool thing about martial arts is we can actually do all of that with the martial arts.
Right.
Now, the physical part, what are we describing here? We're talking about coordination, balance, posture, breathing, body awareness, the techniques of all of those things. That's the physical part of it, right?
Right. Yeah. And it's also like, the ability to be able to translate the knowledge, what you've learned in class. For us, the bottom line litmus test, the pressure test, is if they could actually do it in a situation under duress, under, somebody who attacks them or tries to hurt them and so on. So that physical portion is very important as well. But a lot of the physical ties into the mental, right? And what do you think about that?
Well, yeah, because in mental, what are we focusing on? We're it incorporates focus, like I said, listening, following directions, problem solving, among other things.
Yeah.
Delayed gratification. So, learning how to do the reps now so that you have results later.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all a mental game. That grit is a mental game.
Yeah.
The other thing I brought up was emotional. So there's emotional control. There's frustration, tolerance, confidence under pressure. So if I mess up, am I going to be okay? Yeah. And how do I deal with that? And I'll give you I made a compliment to a kid last week. I had done a program at a local grade school, and I had taught them the three rules of focus: focus my eyes, focus my mind, focus my body. And so I had this, and we had done it reps. I had a girl come up, she volunteered to do it, and she messed it up. So she's like, focus my, whatever she said, I don't remember what it was. And then she chuckled, and, her face got a little red. So she was a little embarrassed, but she chuckled. She fixed it and said it. We all clapped for her. And then I said to her, I want to ask you a question. And she stopped and she said, she said, yes. And I said, well, my question is, did you make a mistake? And she's like, yes, I did. And I go, in as much as I'm glad to know that, you understood that you made a mistake and you corrected it. I go, here's what I'm most impressed with. I go, and I said this in front of everybody. I said, did you guys see what she did? And they're like, no. Yeah, she corrected it. I said, yeah, but that wasn't the best part. I said, the best part was she was able to make the mistake, not break down, but the even better, and finish it and fix it. But the better part was she was able to laugh at her mistakes.
Yeah.
I said, don't ever lose that. Yeah. I go, because if you're able to laugh at your mistake and not take yourself so seriously, I said, you're going places. So what I did was, in that instance, I made sure she understood the most important piece about that whole thing that she just experienced, and the other kids, because this was during PE, and the PE teachers got to see how I drew that out of that situation. But that was, emotional part. Does that make sense?
Totally does. And, like they tie together. So we look at we look at number one is the physical, right? Number two is the mental, right? And we say mental, it almost seems like, that it's a little bit more than it is, right? But it's really the focusing, the listening, the following of directions. Problem solving is a big issue nowadays, right? People can't figure things out. Like they don't visually or auditory, they don't hear and they can't figure it out and make it happen, right? So that's a very important skill that will help these kids in life, because kids they're losing this ability, and it's becoming, and especially the emotional state. I mean, you could see how people are so hypersensitive in our world that we live today. Young adults in their 20s to 30s and 40s, like losing their minds over things that don't fit their agenda, and like acting like, people having tantrums, right? It's like crazy. So this kind of mental education that we teach is very important. And then, as you said, that emotional thing, emotional is so important, Dwayne. I mean, like that control. Like we have a student creed, and one of the sayings is one must learn it. And actually I changed the saying because in Japanese, I didn't like what it said, but I'll tell you what I changed it to, and then I'll tell you what it said. It says one must learn patience within the time it takes to take 2 deep breaths, right? Learning to be able to tolerate and not get upset. It used to say one must learn patience within the time it takes to smoke a cigarette. That was the old Japanese text, right? So I, of course, am not going to promote smoking cigarettes, and I hate them. So I change it to 2 deep breaths, which is a lot quicker than smoking a cigarette, right?
Well, it wouldn't be cigarettes anymore. It'd be weed.
Right, exactly. So so that is one of our creeds that we teach on a basis. You ever have kids, they bump into each other. Master Brummett, he bumped into me, or Master Brummett, he touched me. He hit me. I have a new thing where I put my hands up like that emoji, and I go, no big deal. And I go, everybody say it. Someone bumps into you. What do you say? No big deal. Like, right. And they all like, so anything, like they feel funny coming to me with these silly little things that are so minor, because I'm going to say, what are you supposed to say? No big deal. And then move on. Right. So like that emotional thing that we teach is very, very important.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is, I brought up with social. So with regards to social, I'm referring to respect, teamwork, leadership, empathy, communication, being coachable, if you will, right? So giving and receiving correction. So if you think about those 4 pillars, we're and I've always said this, I just didn't have a way to communicate it. I always said that to me, the teaching of the martial arts was the icing on the cake, but the character development skills, mentally, emotionally, socially, I mean, all of those things were a bigger deal.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the most important things. And as time has gone on, I've realized that those 4 pillars, yes, physical, because everybody wants their child to physically be able to do the techniques and defend themselves. Yeah. But moreover than that, because I've always said that your child is going to have to defend themselves mentally, emotionally, and socially well more than they're going to have to defend themselves.
Oh, yeah. In life, that's happening every day. The physical confrontation is very rare, if ever, right? But all those other things, that's happening on a day-to-day basis.
Yes. And so it's our responsibility to, I think, like especially if you want to have a school that is going to make a difference, is that we teach it on purpose.
Right. Yeah.
Let me say that again. We teach it on purpose. Here's what I used to say. I used to say that martial arts by default teaches these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I still believe that it does. But my problem with that statement is that it still puts me in the same category as everybody else in my area.
Right. Right.
So I don't believe in that statement anymore. I have changed it and say, martial arts teaches these things when you teach them on purpose like we do.
Yeah. And you refer a lot because you're mostly and primarily a younger student school. So you refer to how do we teach the kids? How do we teach this and that and so on? When the parents see, you have a lot of references towards that age group. But honestly, though, this is a late teen and adult issue as well.
Oh, sure.
Just because they made it through life up until this point doesn't mean they're fully prepared and ready to deal. I'll give you an example. I just had a long-term black belt, a second one just recent, not a black belt, a student who's supposed to test for his black belt. The test is not this Sunday, it's next Sunday. And by letter, they quit the school. They're in their 40s. They're like, I'm not ready. I'm not prepared. When I'm ready, I'll let you know. And then they're not even going to train. I'm going to take a step back from my training. And even though that they're not in the best shape of their lives, and I knew that, they have some health issues, and I knew that, and I was going to tailor the test to them. And I told them that. I said, they got in their own head and they quit. And that's the emotional baggage that people carry, or I call it emotional immaturity, right? Where, and by the way, this is why I kind of propose this idea to you today for our podcast, because I see it all the time where, I want to quit. Well, yeah, I don't want to force them. Well, what if you did force them? What do you think? Maybe, and you made them go, and then they got over it, and then they got their black belt. I can guarantee you they're not going to be upset. I put up a picture of I went to a fundraiser with one of my students and his daughter, who were both black belts with me. He was my only 4th degree black belt back in the day. And someone posted on that picture of us together, because it was like a karaoke talent show, and he was dressed as Sonny, him and his daughter Sonny and Cher. So we're standing arm in arm, and someone chimes in and writes a comment. They said, "These are 3 of the people that shaped my life the most." And I click on it and I go, boom. And I find out it was one of my old students. She was a purple or brown belt when she left, but now she's a mom of 2. She's married. She lives in North Carolina. I'm like, holy crap. Like, I never knew that she felt that way. I never knew that she learned that much from us. Like, I didn't get it. Like, so like what we do has a big widespread impact.
Absolutely. So I want to share a 3 simple ideas, if you will, on helping us be able to teach this with purpose. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we call it out when it happens. So call out visible wins as they happen. So think of it like putting captions on moments that nobody wants to miss, meaning that they don't miss what's actually being taught. So for instance, if it was self-control, right, maybe you go, man, I know that you wanted to react, and you chose to not react. You chose to be disciplined, right? So when you see things happen, in as much as I think it's important to teach the kick, I actually think it's more important to call out what also is being taught.
Yeah. And
so when those things happen, let's just say, man, the roundhouse kick just improved really, really good, but it took them, 7 times to make it correct.
Right.
You can obviously say, yes, that's much better. And, but then on the side, like the icing on the cake to that is to say, and what I'm most impressed with is that you didn't give up and you kept trying hard.
Yeah. I do that often in class. I had this young adult that could not do a forward roll. And anyway he went into the forward roll, he always ended up doing a backward roll. So we would laugh about it. I mean, he's probably like 17. We would laugh, and I kind of make little jokes here and there. I go, okay, we're going to do a cartwheel. Oh, wait, this guy's going to do a backward roll. And now he has it. And he has pride. Like every time he does that forward roll, and I go, oh my God, look at you now, right? Like you got it. He's like so happy and smiley. And it's a small little step in progress. But when you call it out, right, it means everything.
It does. It's huge. The next thing out of the 3, so call it out. Next one is build it into structure.
Right.
So we already have tiny rituals that reinforce the values that we want to have happen. Mm-hmm. And so, you specifically, because you said you're very, OCD on this, but if you think about it, we line up, we bow in, we have partner work, there's leadership roles that are happening. So make sure that there's things that are already built into the structure of our classes, but that, we call it out when we see that those things are happening. So, for instance, we will, at the end of a line drill, especially if we have a leader, doing the line drill, we will say, all right, let's come to attention. Let's show respect to our leaders and bow. All right, go through the line, shake their hand, say, thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for, helping me today, or whatever it is. When you do your bow between, your partner drills, maybe you have them shake their hand at the end, or at least say something. Like, you can build some rituals or structure into rituals that are already there that call out the things that you're looking for the students, but then also the parents to see what is happening during those situations.
Yeah, I have that built into our history, where we do our bows to each other, and we say onagai shimasu, meaning like, please teach me, let's work together, I'll learn from you, you learn from me. And then at the end we bow, we say arigato gozaimasu, thank you very much. At the end of class we say shisei o tadashite, Shihan, bow to Shihan, everyone bows. Then we say sogo nire, and that means bow to each other. So the final bow is a bow towards all your partners and who you work with throughout the class, so that we don't have to end the class and do a lot of handshaking and because my old school, we'd spend 15 minutes just saying goodbye, but now, so we do that. So those are in our classical forms of the martial arts that we do. So I love that. I think that's those tiny rituals that you're talking about that literally are, and by the way, you do have to sometimes point out the obvious, right? To a parent. The reason why
to the student too.
Yeah, exactly. But sometimes the students are in the class getting the lesson, but the parent is seeing a bow. Oh, isn't that cute? They all bow to each other at the end, that karate thing, like Karate Kid, right? Like they do that. But then when you go deeper and you say, look, this bow is not just a bow. Like I always tell my students, a bow is so much deeper if you're emotionally connected to the bow. It's like if, I get teared up when I watch Instagram videos, when I watch like a coming home where the soldier comes home and surprises his parents, and then they're not ready and they see him and they get so emotional, right? That emotional response is kind of how you're supposed to feel when you bow. It's not just a bow. It's like thanks and appreciation and reverence to your teacher, to your partner, and respect. Like I always tell my students, grabbing someone and pulling them over so you could work with them is disrespectful. Putting your hands on someone and shoving them and say, you're my partner, that's disrespectful, right? Like they have to learn that, the reason behind it. And we have to educate the parents. That little lesson could be a very valuable lesson to the parents if they knew it.
Yeah. And here's the nice thing is we all have this structure. Every single one of us, whether we realize it or not, we all have this structure. And so what we just have to do is we have to make sure that we're, allowing the students and the parents to understand why that's happening. So therefore, we just don't hope that character is happening. We design for it.
Right.
The last part of this 3-segment framework, if you will, is creating repeatable language. So a repeatable language system for your school. So your school has values, but there are words that can be consistently used over and over again. To your point, some of the Japanese terms that you're saying, right? I don't use Japanese, but I have what we call little Senate sermons that are repeatable and can go many different ways. So like one of them is when a task is once begun, you leave it not until it's done, and be a matter great or small, you do it well or not at all. Another one is anything worth doing is worth doing poorly until you can do it better. Another one, when somebody says I can't, you say there is no such thing as I can't. It's either I won't or I don't know how. So which is it?
Yeah.
So we have repeatable school phrases, right? Or what I call, again, Senate sermons that help to support those things in our school that we're looking to pass on, if you will, to our students.
Right.
And one last point to that. When I was launching my book last year, I had a lady from years ago that was a student of mine. And she goes, I'm going to paraphrase, but I think it was something like this. And I hope I'm not embellishing. Anything that Mr. Brummett puts out, you need to buy.
Right.
And I think it was something like that. She goes, because his one phrase has stuck with me all of my life. And then she literally put the phrase verbatim: when a task is once begun, you leave it not until it's done. And be it a matter great or small, you do it well or not at all. And she goes, every time I want to give up on something, I hear your voice say that. It's
Isn't
like
that
that.
amazing though? And you know what though? They have moved on for years, but and this is what I believe people miss out on in this day and age, is that mentorship, right? So I have this happen quite often where people grow up and they get too old, or they get an ego, and then they stop listening to the sensei. It's not like the old days where, the sensei's up on the mountaintop and you go up there and no matter what, like have you ever seen Mad TV, the episode where it's the Chinese blind master and he has a student and he holds out the pebbles and the guy goes to get him and he closes his hand and smacks him and he keeps on going. He can never get the pebbles from the master's hand until one time he falls down. He pretends like he's having a heart attack and he hits the ground and his hand opens up and the guy looks around. He goes to grab the pebbles and he closes them and smacks the guy and he stands back up again. Right. Like, so it was always that funny thing, like the master still is the master, right? He's still educating you. And a lot of times, look, my students a lot of people have gotten mad at me and stopped training with me because they reached a certain level in their training where they felt they needed to be treated differently by me, where all of a sudden they earn, like a kid grows up in his household and no longer does he call his dad daddy. Now he calls him Hank, or whatever. And he doesn't show that respect. Or, in the martial arts, traditionally, you don't start eating until your instructor starts eating. Quite often in Japan, we'd all be sitting, the food would be hot, and we're starving. And Sensei goes into this story that lasted 30 minutes. And then I'd go, Sensei, no one's eating. He'd go, oh, sorry. And he'd take a bite, and then everyone would start to eat as he would tell his story, because you just never would do that. Right? So Anyway, long story short, these lessons, your Senate sermons, are so valuable, dude. They're life lessons that will last forever. No, even when people have quit long ago.
Well, and to me personally, they were just things that resonated with me that I wanted to teach.
Right.
And then it allowed me to say it in a 1 or 2 sentence framework, but I could expand upon that framework, if that makes sense.
Yes, definitely.
Now, this means nothing. I shouldn't say it means nothing. This doesn't mean as much as if you're not able to translate the class to the parents. So The lessons need to be translated. Parents aren't trained to see the invisible progress.
So true. That's a great thing.
They see the visible progress, meaning the kick and the punch, but they're not trained to see the invisible progress. So we have to make sure that we translate what's happening into parent language.
Right.
And so I was going to say, even from the trial process, when we find out, let's say that, Sally says that I want my child to have more confidence, let's say, we train them right then and there by asking the simple question, well, Mrs. Sally, take a look out on the floor right now. Do you see confidence happening right now? And then she says, yes. Okay, great. Where do you see it? Right there. By who? What do you see? Do you see any confidence happening anywhere else out on the floor? Well, yeah, that person is, doing X, Y. Okay, great. And then we just reinforce the fact that, Mrs. Sally, some of these kids, most of them don't come in confident, but I can assure you over time, their confidence expands and grows deeper.
Yeah.
And so we're teaching them from the onset to look for the things that they're looking for their kid out on the floor.
Yes.
And then the other thing that we prime them with is the fact that, hey, just so you know, especially in the beginning, your kid is going to be looking over at you a lot.
Yeah.
And most parents take it as they're not being focused. What they are is they're excited and they want to see that, your excitement for them. So just do a couple thumbs up, smile at them, that type of thing. Don't do what a lot of parents want to do and, point at their own eyes with two fingers and then point those two fingers back as if your child is not being focused.
Right.
They are being focused, but their attention is being drawn because they want to learn what they're learning here, but they want to make sure that you're seeing what they're learning. So just smile and do the thumbs up. So we're priming them for those situations. Does that kind of make sense?
It totally makes sense. And as I hear it, my mind is going. But I think that, we also have to understand and like I've matured a lot in my life to get to where I am now. And by the way, one of the prayers that I pray every single night that keeps me sane is the Serenity Prayer. Right. And it's, I will accept all the things that I cannot change. Right. That. And I will change whatever I can. But please give me the wisdom and the knowledge to know the difference between the two. Because quite often we will accept it. We say we're going to accept it then, but we try to change it. So because we don't really say, basically that prayer in my eyes is saying, accept the fact that they're not going to come back or they're not going to listen or they're not going to understand. You could do your best to try to change them, but when they don't change, you can't let that bother you to the point where you're going to let it hinder your life, right? So you got to accept the fact that certain people won't listen, certain people won't do anything. But what I can say is this, is that all parents, in my opinion, all want to do the right thing for their kids. However, not all of them have the tools and the wherewithal and understanding to be able to do it, nor the big one is the time and the energy to put into it. So they do whatever they can, but then when it's too hard, they stop and they don't know how to do it. So when you go out and you say, or you do these Senate sermons, and when you go out and you tell a parent, I literally will go out and see, hey guys, you see my little warriors, the 2 to 4 year olds, just understand that most 2-year-olds, boys and girls, can't jump on one foot. So don't look at your kid and go, oh my God, my kid's not coordinated. You just understand that the way the brain develops, they're not able to do that. Some are talented, some of them are naturals. There's a great book called Yardsticks. I love that book. I recommend it to all the parents. I used to buy them and give them to all my new parents when they joined, but 90% of the people that I'd ask afterward would say they never read it.
Because they don't read books.
I was wasting $20, right? Like, to give it to them or whatever. So, but we want to go out and educate the parents and go, I see your kids. You notice your little boy didn't do sit-ups properly. Well, he's got to work on that. No. He can't do a sit-up. His core has not developed yet. He's too little. It hasn't happened. So don't look at the sit-up. He'll try and do his best and struggle and lift up, but it's not like he did anything wrong. It's just the way the body develops mentally and physically, right? So I love it. I love how you're saying that. So these examples on, how to do it, those words, value, what the focus means. What does it mean? Effort, respect, self-control, courage, leadership. You have to really break it down for the parents and the students.
We do. So here's some tangible things that are actionable things that you can do. Maybe a 30-second recap at the end of class, and it could be at the end, like a mat chat.
Right.
Where, you're talking about, hey, what was the thing that you learned or, that was most impactful today or whatever. I mean, obviously, depending on the age of the kid, you'll ask those questions, but also not only at the end of the class, but maybe you say something to the parent, you break that third wall and actually talk to the parent where you say, we worked on focus today. I don't know if you saw, but, Johnny had less distractions today. He was only distracted twice and he recovered a lot quicker. Did you see that?
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or maybe you have a nervous kid and they're usually more nervous than what they are. But yeah, they stayed on the mat this time, the whole time. Like, and so that's confidence.
I always say when you get those crying kids that don't want to do it, parents are like, oh, we'll come back in a few months when he's more. No, just keep bringing them until maybe class 4 or 5. It looks like it's painful, but then all of a sudden they snap out of it. And they're like, oh, I'm glad I stuck it out, because they're ready to give up. Again, we go back to the same thing. The parents don't have the knowledge or the tools or the understanding or the energy to push through these obstacles. And we have to do our best to try to get through to them. So, all right. We also, when I love, that was your translation part of what you were talking about. I think that you have to literally say the words and what they mean so that they understand them, and then how to fix it, how to practice it, what to do at home, and so on.
Well, and we kind of wrap some of this up with our word of the month. So this month, our word of the month is growth.
Right.
So if you think about it, growth could be physical, growth could be mental, it could be emotional, it could be social.
Right.
And those are the 4 pillars that we're talking about.
Right.
And so just with the word growth, I can focus in on whatever, is needed for that child, and then, communicate that to the child and also the parent. Does that kind of make sense?
Totally. Without a doubt.
So if they normally break down and they didn't break down, that's growth. If, they applied the correction that I gave them, meaning that they're coachable, that's growth. So if they, if they actually, showed some grit and didn't give up, right?
Right.
That shows growth. But it's not just the word growth. We have to connect that to, the person's coachable. The person had focus. The person had, they grew in their focus. They grew in their confidence. They grew in their ability to be able to be coached. They grew in their respect because, so I'll give you an example. Last night in my 3 and 4-year-old class, this little kid, they're supposed to do a front kick and then, kick the pad, which I'm holding the pad, and then run around and go to the end of the line. Well, actually run and tag the ball and go to the end of the line. Well, this one kid, he did the kick and he did not make a wide turn. He made a short, sharp turn, and he actually tripped over the kid behind him.
Right.
And so they both stood up. The kid that got tripped over was crying. And I said, ooh, let me look. And I'm looking, and he's just I go, uh-oh. And then all of a sudden, because I said, uh-oh, he stopped crying because he wanted to hear what I had to say.
Yeah.
So I'm distracting him. I'm doing some distracting techniques and, kind of navigating different areas. And the other kid that ran him over, because I said to him, I go, there's nothing wrong.
Right.
I said, you look great. I said, now so-and-so, because I don't want to say his name on online, but I said, so-and-so has something that he wants to say to you. And then the kid that ran him over, I said, would you like to apologize, to so-and-so? Again, I don't want to use names. And he said, yes, sir. And so he goes, I'm sorry. And then I go, why don't you guys shake hands and hug it out?
Right.
And so they shook hands, and they're 3 and 4. They hugged it out. And I said to him, I said, so-and-so, I go, that was very nice and very respectful of you to apologize to him. Yeah. Thank you for doing that. Does that take time? It does.
It does, but you see, that's why I believe, and I've always believed, that the martial arts is like the magic pill. Like I always tell people, you could join baseball, soccer, football. All those sports are great. You'll learn team sports. You'll learn competitive nature. You'll learn sport camaraderie and teamwork. But you will never go as deep as you go in the martial arts, because that's like a parent. To me, I'm always blown away when they say, yeah, we're going to stop. We're going to try something new. Either I feel at that point that I did not do a good job at explaining why we're so valuable in their child's life, because they're going to go to do soccer or they're going to go do t-ball or whatever. Like, are they going to get out what we give? And then a parent will say, well, we just want, because they have not bought into it. They don't believe in what we're doing. They'll go, well, we don't really want to force him, or we want him to have other experiences. And I'd say, well, why don't they stay in the martial arts and have other experiences? But the martial arts will be their core foundation. Like this young girl, who's now a mom of 2, said to me, these are 3 people that have shaped my life. Right now, as an adult, she's saying that. And I'm going like, wow, something we did above and beyond teaching her how to kick and punch and fight connected with her that made her get through whatever or do whatever she did, accomplish who she become.
Exactly. And that's priceless. Like if you stop and thinking about it, it's
Absolutely.
priceless. Now there's optional things that you can do, right? So there's the no paperwork version that most schools can use. And what I mean by that is they use the 4 pillars as an actual lens that they see things through. So they're going to make those captions to moments in class. They're going to share one parent translation, right? They're going to maybe break that third wall and say, Mrs. Jones, did you just see, the grit that your son or daughter, like,
Right.
That's just all verbal. Another one is you could use maybe some light paperwork version.
Right.
So, like for instance, our word of the month is growth. And so, each class, there could be a framework where, in that month, we want to see growth in this, this, and this, or just one thing, right?
Right.
I want to grow in this area. Okay. And then that could be them. They either they could keep track of it, you could keep track of it, both of you could keep track. But the thing is, you'd want to keep it as simple as possible.
Right.
I just wanted to throw that out there. We do pretty much the no paperwork version.
Right.
I know of a school owner that she has quarterly meetings. So after every belt testing cycle, she does meetings with the parents,
Right.
and the kids. Some of it's in person, a lot of it's on Zoom where she has it set up. Then they do Zoom meetings, which that's kind of nice because then you're getting everybody involved. You talk about what just, like we have the black belt success system. You know what you want, have a plan and a success coach, take consistent action, review your progress and renew your goals. And so, that's one of those strategic things, but you review the progress that you just did. Let's just say the word of the month was growth. And now this month it's X, or in the 3-month time span, like she does, this is what we want to accomplish. So we want to get our next belt, but inside of that, there's these things that we want to improve on. So what do we want to improve on mentally, emotionally, socially, and physically?
Mm-hmm.
And that allows the student to see some of the invisible things, making it visible. The parents to see some of the invisible things, making it visible. When you do those type of things, I would venture to say that your program becomes way more important than some of these other quote unquote activities.
Yeah. That's important, though. I like what you just said. If you can do what you're saying and connect with the families in a deeper level, like, for example, grit, the word of the month is grit. And then those kids could take that word home and have a dinner discussion about what grit is. Quite often a parent doesn't know. So when I do my word of the month, I put it up on the wall and then I do a mini description. I usually sit down and say, okay, our word. And by the way, my word of the month is until this month. And that's from Kenny Bigby's video when he talks about how long do you keep on fighting until you win or until you have no blood left in your body. Everything is until. When do you quit the obstacle course in the Navy SEALs? Until you never quit. You'd keep on going until, right? So I took that and I made his thing the word of the month. But it's hard because people, I feel bad in a way. In our society we live, we're inundated with so many things. So like we're up against like a tidal wave and we're trying to swim to shore and get out of the way of the wave. That's because parents are, and they have multiple kids and multiple activities and they have homework from school and after school activities and what they need to do for gymnastics, dance, football, baseball, karate. Like we got to somehow tap into that so that they think of what we do as one of the top things and they make that their staple for life skills in their kid's life. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And the thing we have to be careful of is that we don't fall in what I would call the belt trap. We've got to avoid that.
Right.
So listen, belts are fine and they're expected in most martial arts schools, right? So belts are fine. Only when they're symbols, though, they're not the product. Let me say that again. Only when they're symbols, they're not the product.
Right.
So if a parent only sees belts, then the only value to them is what? The belt.
Right.
Yes. So we've got to make sure that we reframe in the parents' minds, but also the students' minds. Let's just say belt tests, right? Belt tests are character showcases,
right.
just as much as their skill checks. Yes. Right. But we need to see that their character is different this testing than it was the last testing.
Right.
And so character can be measured in those other ways that we talked about. So we talked about the 4 pillars: physical, yes, but mental, emotional, social. Have they improved in those other 3 areas, not just the physical with the skill check? Does that kind of make sense?
Well, no, it doesn't kind of make sense. It totally makes sense. To me, it is something that I wish you weren't talking to me, you were talking to the parents and they were listening. Because sometimes coming from me, it's just Shihan. He came out after class and he said, like, I'll come out to the parents and I'll go, oh my God, the kids were amazing today. Did you see how well behaved they were, how they stayed in line and how they listened and how they paid attention? And then I'll go over and I get a lot of parents that they're happy about that. But it doesn't go beyond, like they'll go and, maybe on the way home, I can't believe it. I'm so proud of you. That's great. But how do we go beyond the mat? And how do we get into, how do we get them to allow us into their home so that we could continue the lessons? That's a big.
Yeah, we need to be seen as the sage person, the monk on the mountain. I mean, that's just like, yeah. But part of that is we have to frame this in a way that parents understand it, but then can also regurgitate it.
Right.
And so, like, one of the things is teaching your parents to praise effort over skill.
Right.
Not saying, man, you did a sharp roundhouse kick. You say, man, I loved how you didn't give up when you were doing that roundhouse kick. Or I love, the discipline in that round, or the focus in that roundhouse kick. And then making sure that they understand that, like, let's just say belt testing, we're testing technique. Yes. But to me, what's more important is we're also watching focus, effort, and even how they handle pressure.
Right.
Because the technique is important, but it's not more important than those other things.
Yeah. And I know we have so much, Dwayne, to cover that we might want to even go into a second podcast on this because, all the ideas that you and I had, we've gotten like through half of them. Right. So
we're good. We'll make it happen.
But it's amazing to me also that, people don't like. I'll give you an example. I had a parent, total jerk, right? His kid I really liked. She was the shyest kid, wouldn't even come out, would hide behind her dad. Then by the time we got her up to brown belt. She was doing amazing. She was confident. She would teach and talk but the parent had an issue. He'd always say, oh yeah, you want people. I always would talk about the word reverence, right? I have reverence for my teachers. Like I revere them because I love them and I appreciate them and I see their skills and all they've done for me. So I'd say the parents are missing the fact that they should teach reverence to their kids. And this guy would always say, well, that's just because you want people to bow to you, right? Oh, almighty Shihan, right? I finally eventually parted ways with this guy. I tolerated him for long enough, kicked him and his kid out of my dojo. But at the same time, what people don't realize, like if I'll give you an example. I took a guitar lesson from a person who was world famous, world renowned, probably one of the best guitar players in the world. Like people, if I mentioned him, they know him and so on. But he was a difficult teacher to train with. Very difficult. He wouldn't talk and let me ask questions. He was just mean as hell at times. He'd yell at me, scream at me. And now I have a new teacher who is also quite famous. And he said to me, he goes, don't worry, man, you're traumatized. You're still traumatized over the last guy. He goes, I'd say to him, look, I haven't practiced. He goes, don't worry. I'm not going to get mad at you and yell at you and call you stupid and tell you suck. You're fine. We'll just play and have fun. And I literally do the lesson and just enjoy being in the lesson. Like it's like spiritual motivation to me. Like I just have fun. I have no goal in mind. I don't want my next belt in guitar. I'm not going to join a band. I already done that and so on. But I have to understand that I do it because I love it. And that's what we got to get the parents to realize. Like, they got to have that reverence. They got to teach their students, their kids, to look up to. Like, let that teacher, let that sensei become your mentor.
Yeah, and the other thing that we have, is the fact that we have the one room schoolhouse effect. So what do I mean by that? They start with us when they're 3, and then they can continue for the rest of their life, or at least until they go off to college or whatever it is. And so that gives us leverage. We can play the long game.
Okay.
And that makes us totally different than any other activity or sport or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yes. Gymnastics, you can start at 3 and you can go all the way up, right? Dance, you can start at 3 and go all the way up. But I can assure you, they are not teaching these character development skills in there.
Absolutely not.
Now, there are other martial arts schools that say they teach them, but they're not doing it on purpose.
Right. And I have to be honest, I hate to say this, but there are a lot of schools that the instructors are physically talented and young, and they open up a school and they learn the business side, and they become very, very successful as far as finances and growth of their school. But they've never had a mentor in their lives. They don't know either. So I've had people that I've mentored, and then they grew up, and then they stopped wanting to be mentored. And then they broke off and opened up their own school. Some of them have gone out of business. 1 or 2 of them are fairly successful, but they lost the lesson that your teacher is your teacher. He'll guide you. He'll help you. And even though you don't like what you're going to hear sometimes, and you're going to get a hard slap in the face. Like, I had a 62-year-old black belt of mine who said, I don't like the way, you criticize me on my black belt test. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm just trying to make you a better student and teach you what you need to learn. But when did you become the guy who had the attitude, and I'm supposed to kowtow and bow down to you and worry about how I correct and all that? Like, just train. Just be a student. Stop with the whining.
Yeah, well, back in the day, you wouldn't have even apologized for that.
No, I would have said, okay, get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So before we wrap up, let's give some practical examples that, like some quick scripts, if you will.
Okay.
So let's say, first scenario, you have a shy kid and you want to kind of focus on the social plus emotional pillars. You could just say something like, hey, your wins today wasn't the kick. Your win was that you stayed on the mat even though you were nervous.
Right.
Right? Or, hey, I saw you make eye contact, and you answered loud. That's showing up with confidence.
I love it.
Right? You partnered up without freezing this time.
Yeah.
That's social courage. Look, even most adults struggle with that. Or you came in front of the class and did the student creed, even though you were nervous.
Right.
That's social courage.
Right.
Most adults don't even want to stand up and give a speech. They'd rather die than do that. Right? Does that kind of make sense?
I love it. Yeah. And, it's really valuable. Like, you're because a student doesn't know, by the way, when I look a student in the eyes and I say something minor and I go, oh my God, you did amazing. You're just really doing well today. Your effort, your attitude. As strong and stoic as they want to be, a smile starts to come on their face and they start to feel that pride bubbling up. And that's important as mentors, as sensei, as sifus, as whatever, sabanim. You have to be able to get that student to appreciate your kind words so that they take more constructive criticism and they listen to you more, and so on and so forth.
Well, let's give some more here. So let's say you have a high energy kid. Who does not have one of those, right?
Right.
Okay. So let's say you want to focus on the mental and emotional pillars. So you say, man, just so you know, your superpower is energy.
Yes.
And today we're training the steering wheel of focus. So I want you to take a look and be totally focused. Use that energy as focused energy today.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, I want you to move, but I also want you to hold your stance for 10 seconds.
Right. Right.
self-control. Can you do it?
Right. And it's funny, like you could, like I have a few kids that don't listen and I give them a warning. You do the 3-strike method, right? And then you maybe put them in timeout or whatever. But I find that being the adult instructor with a little kid that's being misbehaving, you have to learn how to switch that like you're doing now and saying your superpower is you're strong and you have a ton of energy. So come on up and help me teach the class. You stand right next to me, and every time I do a punch, you do it with me, but you do it stronger than me. Now you're taking that crazy pent up energy and you're turning it into a positive behavior. And now they're learning how to be noticed and recognized for successes. And I always say, would you rather get caught doing something bad or something good? And then sometimes I'll say, stop. And I'll look around. I'm like, okay, everyone's standing the way they're supposed to. You're doing a good job. Like that kind of mindset.
Well, and look, if you, one of the things that resonated with me, this was years ago. I heard a speaker say this, and he said, I don't know what grade he was in. It could have been 8th grade or ninth grade, whatever it was. But he would repeatedly get in trouble for talking in class. And so he would get detentions.
Right.
And so this time the teacher held him after class and he said, I'm not going to give you a detention. He goes, or she, it was a she. She said, you have a gift, but you can't keep using that gift to interrupt my class.
Right.
So your punishment is next semester, you have to take speech class. So he signed up for speech class. He became a speaker. And so what she noticed was he did have a superpower.
Yeah.
She complimented it, said, but you can't use it to interrupt my class, but here's how you're going to use it.
Right.
That was beautiful. Now,
I love it.
Let's say you have a talented kid. Who doesn't have this? A talented kid with an attitude.
Right.
Okay. So we want to focus on the social and also mental pillars with that. So just something as simple as saying, look, being good isn't the goal, but being coachable is.
Right.
So show me how you can take feedback and apply it.
Right.
Or, say yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, and make the correction without the eye rolling.
Right.
That's humility.
Yeah. Love it.
You kind of see where we're calling out what's happening, but we're trying to put it into a positive light.
Right. Yeah. Praise, correct, praise, right?
Yeah, but it's done in. I like to do most things in like with a question at the end,
right?
Because here's what science has shown: is when your brain is asked a question, it tries to find the answer.
Right.
It's almost impossible for your brain not to try to search for an answer when there's a question.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Totally. I love it. Absolutely, man.
And then one last one, your teen is losing motivation. So maybe you want to focus on identity and also leadership through the pillars. So, look, you don't have to feel motivated, but you do have to be consistent.
Right.
That's what grown-ups do.
Right.
What would you like to do?
Correct. I like it. That's awesome.
Hey, these little kids over here are watching you. So when you show up, you're teaching them what that looks like. Allowing them to see that they're the example.
Yep. Exactly.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yep. I always tell that to my higher ranks. I go, look, everyone's looking up at you to see how you act, and they're going to emulate and follow what you do.
Yeah, and I would recommend, and I forget who the author is, but the book is called Declarative Language.
Oh, yeah. I didn't love that book, only the way it was written. It was very textbook written. You recommended it to me, but it had a lot of great stuff in it.
Yeah, I think it's really, really good. Yeah. So that would be my recommendation. So some action steps before we wrap up here.
Okay.
Pick your framework. We do a 4 framework, right? So four pillar framework: physical, mental, emotional, and social.
Yes.
And then teach that framework to your staff.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that, they also, and you can name things in the moment. So put a caption. Teach your staff how to put captions on moments that happen.
Right.
If you have a word of the month, tie everything into that word of the month so that you just keep or even if it's a word of the week, some people have word of the week, tie it back in so that it becomes some type of anchor that's happening.
Right.
Does that all make sense?
It does, man. This was for one, it was a great podcast. Two, it motivates me as well. Like when I leave our podcasts, I sometimes have a boost of energy because between you and I talking together and putting out stuff to the people to listen to, I'm also listening and learning and going, I forgot to do that. I used to do this. I got to do more of that, and so on and so forth. So I really do appreciate being on there with you and being able to share with others.
My pleasure. Look, if you take nothing else from today's podcast, understand that you're not just teaching a visible curriculum. You're teaching an invisible curriculum. And the families, the kids, they're not just going to stay there because you're teaching great kicks.
Right.
They stay because their kid is becoming, or even themselves, they're becoming stronger, somebody they can be proud of.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And the fastest way to make this, real and teachable, especially the invisible curriculum on purpose, and you have to learn to start translating your actions and your verbiage and why you say, even if it's in English, why you're saying and doing what you're doing, because just because people could understand the language, they might not understand the methodology and the reason behind it. So you want to make it so that the students and the parents can actually see it.
I couldn't agree more. If they can understand it and apply it, that's great. But if they're able to regurgitate it to someone else,
right,
who isn't even in your studio,
and believe it.
Yes. So if this episode helped you, share it with another school owner who needs maybe this information or maybe a reminder of what we do, what we do actually matters.
Yeah, and if you want more conversations like this or topics similar to this, please make sure that you subscribe, like, and share our podcast. And we're on YouTube or on Spotify, so you could listen to us driving in your car. No more listening to just music or, the murder mystery podcast that you listen to, right? Also, too, and I don't know if you guys have done this or if you can, please do it for us, is leave a review. And it's important, because those reviews trigger an algorithm within, Spotify, iTunes, so that more people will see the podcast in their generic advertising, right? And also YouTube will play it more and people will see it. It'll come up more in searches and so on. So, do that and leave a review and come and hang out with us at School Owner Talk in our School Owner Talk community on Facebook, and also go to our website at schoolownertalk.com.
Excellent. Well, remember, we've got an important thing to do. We are the last line of defense, in our opinion. So let's teach the visible and the invisible curriculum together.
I love it. All right, Dwayne, thank you. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.
Now that's a wrap. Another episode of Martial Arts School Owner Talk is in the vast library. We appreciate you tuning in and being part of this incredible community. A huge thank you to everyone who makes this podcast possible, including our sponsors, such as EliteInsights.com, your go-to high-performing website company for martial arts schools, LeadHunterMedia.com, your expert in digital media and content creation for martial arts schools, AddHealthCoaching.com, helping school owners unlock a powerful revenue stream by providing the tools and framework to become a health coach. Thanks again for joining us. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe and share our show with other school owners and friends. See you on the next episode.